Okay, second part of 2.1 and 2.2, whenever it's kind of combined, is the writing equations of quadratics. So it says to determine the equation of quadratic functions from the graph given, give the function in standard form. Just a reminder as far as your different forms, you have standard form. Okay, if you need to write this somewhere, standard form is going to be where it's going to be y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Whereas then the other one that we are going to write it in is going to be vertex form. Remember where that is, y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Now, remember, h and k deals, if it's in vertex form, then you're going to have a vertex. Okay? What's going to happen a lot of times with these is that you're going to kind of have to start it. If you already have a pictured graph, what I would suggest is to put it in vertex form and then multiply everything out. Okay, and then just basically simplify and combine like terms and just do regular order of operations. So if you have a graph pictured, I would start in vertex form. Okay, I would start here, and then if it says to put it in standard form, then just solve it out. If it says to leave it in vertex form, great. Don't do anything. Just put it in vertex form and go from there. Okay? So if you started in vertex form, you've got to figure out what is A, what is H, and what is K, and then go from there. Okay? So remember that whenever you have it pictured, that your vertex is just your H and your K. Okay? Remember, your H is always opposite of whatever that value is. Okay? So if on example 1, I have a vertex that is right up here at the top, where's my actual vertex at? What is the vertex that's right up there? -4, +3. So -4, 3 is my vertex. Okay? So in terms of putting it into standard form, okay, I still need to have, I have an H and I have a K. Okay. The one thing I don't have right now is A. Remember, like we talked about yesterday, kind of the easy thing to do is we always want to go that one step to the right and then however many it takes to get to your next spot. So now this is a little bit tricky because there are actually 2 lines. Okay, because it shows you a half on each one. But what is my actual A value? What did we do? We took one slide step to the right, then what did we do? We went down 1, right? So my A value is at -1. So if you have it pictured, I can just go straight into my vertex equation, or vertex form, and have y equals, I'm going to go -1 times x minus -4 quantity squared, and then plus 3. Now, what's going to happen right here in the middle of what's going to happen with the 2 negatives? They're going to cancel and they're going to become positive, right? So if you know that going in, and you can automatically just basically write this as y equals, and you can leave it as -1 if you want, or if you can just leave it as negative and have x plus 4 quantity squared plus 3. Now, if it tells you to write it in vertex form, you are done. Okay? If it says write it in vertex form, you would be finished right there and you could stop. Now, the problem is it doesn't say to write it in vertex form. It says to write it in standard form. So what we have to do, we got to go a little bit further. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have -1. So I'm just going to kind of leave that there. So if it says vertex form, I would stop. Since it says standard form, I'm going to take -1 times x plus 4 times x plus 4, and then plus 3. Now, I would multiply, if you know the shortcut and you can do the shortcut with a perfect square binomial, then do that. If you can't, then what I would do, or what I would suggest, is to multiply those two first. So I'm going to have negative 1 times x squared plus 4x plus 4x plus 16. And I have the plus 3 on the back end. Now, combine like terms. So I have negative 1 times x squared plus 8x plus 16. Still have the plus 3 on the back. Let's get to where we can actually see the plus 3. There we go. Now, what do I need to do with that negative 1? What is that negative 1 going to do to everything that's inside that parenthesis? It's going to change the signs, right? So I'm going to have x squared plus, it's not plus, minus 8x minus 16 plus 3. Combine like terms, and then y equals negative x squared. My fault. Negative x squared minus 8x minus 13. So if it has it in vertex form, I'm basically going to stop right there at the red. If it says to put it in standard form, then I'm going to need to multiply my binomial. If I have a number out in front, I'll do that. Okay, I'll distribute all that through, and then add whatever I have on the back end. So then, again, same way on 2. Now, this one's going to be a little bit different because it's going up, so there's not going to be a negative that I have to worry about. So again, start it off in vertex form. So find my vertex. What is my vertex of my parabola? 4, negative 3. So if I'm going to start it out in y equals a times x minus h quantity squared plus k. So start it in vertex form. Now, I have my h and I have my k. What is... I went one step to the right and then one up. So what's my a value? Just 1. So do I really need anything out in front of that? No. So again, if it said to just write it in vertex form, all I would have to do is just go y equals. I don't need anything there for a, and I would just go x minus 4 squared minus 3. Okay, since it's negative 3, I would just have a minus 3 there. So again, if it said to solve this in vertex form, I would stop right here, and I would be done. Anytime you have a graph, and if it says to write it in vertex form, then that's going to be the easiest way to do it. I'll tell you that right now. Okay? But if it gives it to you in standard form, you've got to know that, so that's why we're doing the examples all the way out. Okay, so we can kind of kill two birds with one stone here. So then if we're going to write this in standard form, all I'm going to do, I'm just going to have y equals again, and I'm going to go x minus 4 times x minus 4, and then the minus 3 on the back end. Multiply your two binomials. Whenever I do, I have x squared minus 4x again, plus 16 and minus 3. Now, since this one doesn't have a negative, it makes it a little bit easier because I can combine two things at once. And I can just write it as y equals x squared minus 8x plus 13. Now, some of these are going to be able to, you're going to be able to kind of check yourself, by looking at the y-intercept. Now in this case it doesn't really work that way because the y-axis only goes up to 3. Okay? But there are in some cases where if it crosses the y-axis, that should be a good reference to see, hey, did I do this right or did I not? Okay. So again, if you have to write it in vertex form, you're going to stop right there on the red or right above the blue line. Okay? If it says to do standard form, I have to keep going. I have to multiply that squared binomial and then go from there. Doing it with pictures definitely helps. Okay? In some cases, whenever it's going to be written out in words, they're a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, it's really not too bad. Okay? You just have to kind of get your mind around what's actually happening. So it says, determine the equation of the quadratic function from the given following information. So it tells you that you have a double root. What it means if you have a double root is that's where, okay, like if I would physically draw this out, then I would have a point at -3, 0. A double root just means that my vertex is right here, and then it's going to go this direction. Okay? Since it goes to has a y-intercept of 18, that means it has to go up, right? A double root just means that that's where my vertex is. So then, if we have a vertex, so anytime you have a double root, that will be your vertex. Okay, so anytime it says double root, that means you have a vertex. So, what form should you probably put this in to start? Vertex form. Okay? Use a little bit of common sense. So if we put this in vertex form, remember, vertex form is when y is equal to a times x minus h squared plus k. So your -3 is your h, your 0 is your k. What are we missing? We're missing a. Okay? So before we even get started, we've got to find a. Okay? So in doing that, I'm going to use the other point that they give us. So if I'm going to use y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, first off, which values can I kind of plug in or as I go? If I'm trying to find a, obviously I don't have a number that's going to go there. Do I have a number that I can plug in for h? Yes, what is it? If h is -3, what's it actually going to be inside the parenthesis? +3. So I'm going to have a +3 right here. What am I going to have plus k on the outside? What value is going to be for k? 0. What am I going to use for x and y? Huh? Say it again. The y-intercept. Okay? I'm going to use these two values. They give me the values for a reason. Now, what value am I going to use for y? 18. So I'm going to have 18 equals, what value am I going to have for x? 0. So realistically, I don't care about the 0 that's on the back end. I'm going to have 18 equals a times 0 plus 3 is 3. What's 3 squared? 9. So what do I need to do with that 18 and the 9? Divide it. So 18 divided by 9, so what's my value for a? 2. So if a is 2, now do I have all the pieces and parts to write it in vertex form? Yeah. So if I do, I'm going to have y equals, okay, y equals, what's going to go in for a? 2 times x plus 3, quantity squared. If it's plus 0, I don't have to have anything out there. You can write plus 0 if you want, but like this part right there is not one that you have to go with. Now, if it would tell you to write it in standard form, we would have to keep going. For basically time's sake, I'm going to stop right there. And again, if you want to put plus 0, you can, but it's not a must. Same thing on 4. The only difference here is now you're going to be given, it tells you vertex is at 3, 5. So if it tells you that the vertex is at 3, 5 right here, whoop, we're probably going to need to use that, right? Okay. It will tell you in words what you need to know. All right. It will tell you, unless it gives you 3 different points, it will most likely give you the vertex. Okay. It crosses at 5, 1. We're going to use that later, right? Just like we did with the 0 and the 18. Okay. Because the first things first, with any of these, the first thing you have to do is find A. So make sure you find A before you do anything. So if I'm going to find A and I have y equals A times x minus h, quantity squared plus k, what value am I going to put in for y? 1. I don't know what A is. That's what I'm trying to find. What value am I going to put in for x? 5. 5 minus 3 squared plus 5 again. So just solve for A. So I'm going to have 1 equals A times 2 squared plus 5. How am I going to get rid of the 5? Subtract it from both sides. So I have negative 4 equals A times 4. So what's A equal to? Negative 1. Whoop. So if A is equal to negative 1, now do I have all the information I need to write it in vertex form? Do I have H and K and do I have A? You bet. So I can just write y equals, I'm going to put negative 1. You can just put a negative in front of it if you want. X minus 3, quantity squared, plus 5.